He was rescued from the storm, but his last request will haunt her forever, Kat's letter. Dear Meredith, if I could talk to you right now, I would tell you that the day you found me wasn't just the day you rescued a cat. It was the day two broken hearts found each other. You never knew this, but I recognized something in your eyes that rainy afternoon, a sadness I understood all too well. Maybe that's why I didn't run away when you approached me, even though I had learned to be wary of humans. Something told me we needed each other. Remember how it was pouring that day? I was huddled under the awning of Miller's hardware store, soaked to the bone despite my best efforts to stay dry. The rain had been falling for hours, turning the gutters into small rivers and sending most people hurrying past with their heads down. I had been on my own for months by then, ever since the elderly man who fed me behind his diner passed away. His family closed the place down, and just like that, I was alone again. I had almost given up hope when I heard your footsteps slowing down. Most people walked right past me, but you stopped. You were carrying that big green umbrella with the broken spoke that made one side droop. Your grey hair was tucked under a plastic rain bonnet, and you were wearing those sensible brown shoes that squeaked when they got wet. I remember thinking you looked as tired as I felt. Well, hello there, you said, crouching down despite the puddle forming around your feet. Aren't you a sorry sight? Your voice was soft, not threatening like some humans. You held out your hand, and I sniffed it cautiously. Your fingers smelled like the tuna sandwich you'd had for lunch and the lavender lotion you always use. I was so hungry and cold that I let you touch my head. Your hand was warm, despite the chilly air. You poor thing, you whispered. You're all skin and bones. Then you did something that changed my life. You took off your scarf, that blue one your sister Margaret knitted for your birthday, and wrapped it around me. You scooped me up against your chest and I could hear your heartbeat. It was steady and strong despite everything you'd been through. I didn't struggle. Somehow, I knew I was going home. The walk to your house wasn't long, but I remember every detail. The way you talked to me the whole time, telling me about the spare bedroom that would be just perfect for a cat. How you worried aloud whether the corner store would still be open to buy cat food. The careful way you held me as if I might break. By the time we reached your front porch, the one with the peeling white paint and the hanging fern that's seen better days, I was already starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, my luck had changed. Your house smelled like cinnamon and coffee and old books. It was warm and quiet, so different from the noisy streets. You wrapped me in a towel and rubbed me dry, then set me down on the kitchen floor while you opened a can of tuna. I was too nervous to eat at first, but you sat on the floor next to me, patient and still, until I finally took a bite. I can still hear you laughing softly when I gulped it down and looked up for more. Slow down, you said. There's plenty more where that came from. No one's going to take it away from you. I didn't understand your words then, but I felt their meaning. That first night, you made a bed for me in the laundry room, but sometime after midnight I found my way to your bedroom. You were sitting up in bed, reading by the light of that old lamp with the yellowed shade. When I jumped up beside you, you didn't shoo me away. You just moved over to make room as if you'd been saving that spot for me all along. The next morning we went to see Dr. Carpenter at the animal clinic. I didn't like the car ride or the strange smells, but you kept whispering reassurances. Dr. Carpenter said I was about 3 years old, underweight, and had a slight ear infection but otherwise healthy. When he asked what my name was, you looked at me for a long moment. Huxley, you finally said. He looks like an Huxley. And just like that, I had a name. Not just any name, but the same name as your father, who you told me later had been the kindest man who ever lived. I've tried my best to live up to that every day since. Those first weeks were a time of getting to know each other. I learned that you woke up at 6:30 every morning, even though you'd been retired from the library for 5 years. You always made your bed immediately, smoothing the quilt with careful hands. You read the newspaper while drinking your first cup of coffee, saving the crossword puzzle for after breakfast. You talked on the phone with your sister every Sunday, and sometimes you cried afterward. You watched old movies on television at night, the kind with dancing and singing, and I learned why there was so much sadness in your eyes. I overheard you telling your neighbor Martha that your husband Frank had passed away 3 years ago. A heart attack, you said. So sudden. One minute we were planning our anniversary trip and the next, your voice trailed off. That night when you cried in your sleep, I curled up against your neck and purred until you quieted. I also discovered the empty bedroom down the hall, The one with the baseball trophies on the shelf and the college pennant on the wall. You kept the door closed most of the time, but sometimes you go in there and sit on the bed, holding a framed photograph. Once I followed you in and heard you talking softly to the picture. Your son doesn't call much anymore, you told me later, stroking my fur. He's very busy with his own family out in California. The way you said it made me think you were trying to convince yourself more than me, but it wasn't all sadness. No, Meredith, we had so many good days together. Remember how surprised you were to discover I knew how to play fetch? The way you laughed when I brought back that crumpled receipt the first time. After that, you bought me proper toys, catnip mice and little balls with bells inside, but my favorite was always that red yarn ball you made from leftover wool. I'd retrieve it for hours just to see you smile, and then there was my special trick, the one that made you laugh until you cried. How I could open the cabinet where you kept the treats by hooking my paw under the handle and pulling. You caught me at it one day, and instead of scolding me, you called your sister right away to tell her. "This cat is too smart for his own good," you said, but I could hear the pride in your voice. Our days fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings were for bird watching from the kitchen window while you had your breakfast. You'd comment on the Cardinals and Blue Jays at the feeder as if I understood every word. Maybe you knew I did. Afternoons, you'd read in your armchair by the front window, and I'd curl up on your lap, lulled to sleep by the sound of turning pages and your gentle breathing. Sometimes you'd read parts aloud to me, especially if you found something funny or moving. I loved the sound of your voice, the way it changed to match the words on the page. Remember the time the big thunderstorm knocked out the power? The house was dark except for the candles you lit, placing them carefully on saucers around the living room. You were nervous. You never did like storms, but you tried not to show it. I stayed close to you all night, even though thunderstorms make me anxious too. We kept each other brave until morning came and the lights flickered back on. Or what about the day you decided to clean out the garage? You found an old photo album tucked away in a box, and you spent the whole afternoon on the porch swing, turning the pages slowly, sometimes laughing, sometimes wiping away tears. I sat beside you, watching the pictures of your younger self with Frank, with your son David when he was small, with friends at parties and beaches and graduation ceremonies. You talked to me about each photo, telling me stories I couldn't fully understand, but somehow felt in my heart. "This is my history, Huxley," you said, "all the pieces that made me who I am." I nuzzled your hand to let you know I was listening. Food became our special connection. You discovered I loved tuna and chicken but wouldn't touch beef. You started cooking for both of us. Simple meals that we shared at the kitchen table, you in your chair, me on the counter beside you, even though you pretended to disapprove. "Don't tell Dr. Carpenter," you'd whisper as you slipped me a piece of your baked chicken. Those meals were sacred times, just the two of us, sharing the day's end together. Holidays were quiet affairs, but you made them special. For Christmas, you hung a stocking for me next to yours on the mantel. Inside were new toys and special treats, wrapped in tissue paper that I enjoyed shredding almost as much as the gifts themselves. You even took a photo of me next to the small tree and sent it to David and his family. "Look at your brother," you wrote on the back. I heard you tell Martha that David had called to say the photo made him laugh. You were smiling when you hung up the phone. When spring came, you started working in the garden again. I would follow you outside, sticking close to your side as you planted tomatoes and zucchini, marigolds and petunias. You wore your wide-brimmed straw hat and talked to the plants as you worked, encouraging them to grow strong and healthy. Sometimes you'd talk to me too, telling me about gardens you'd had in other homes, vegetables you'd grown with Frank, flowers that reminded you of your mother. I'd listen, rolling in patches of sunlight or batting at butterflies that ventured too close. The seasons turned, one into another, and our bond grew stronger. I learned all your habits, your moods, the small sounds you made when you were happy or sad or worried. You learned mine too, how I twitched my tail when I was annoyed, how I purred loudest when you scratched behind my left ear, how I always knew when you weren't feeling well, and would stay especially close on those days. Do you remember the time you got that bad cold? You could barely get out of bed for 3 days. I never left your side, curling up next to you, purring to ease your discomfort. You told me later that my warmth was better than any hot water bottle. When your fever finally broke and you could sit up and eat the soup Martha brought over, I felt as relieved as if I'd been the one who was sick. There was the summer when it was so hot that neither of us had much energy. We'd lie on the cool kitchen tiles, you with a glass of iced tea, me stretched out as long as I could make myself. You'd run ice cubes over my fur, and I'd pretend to be annoyed but secretly loved it. Those lazy afternoons blend together in my memory. The whirring of the ceiling fan, the distant sound of lawn mowers, your gentle hands stroking my back. As time passed, I noticed changes in you. Your movements became slower, more deliberate. You started taking more pills with breakfast. The walks we used to take around the neighborhood, me following a few steps behind, never straying far, grew shorter, then less frequent. Some mornings, it took you longer to get out of bed, but your kindness never wavered. If anything, the love in your eyes when you looked at me grew deeper, as if you were memorizing every whisker, every spot of color in my fur. I changed too. The jumping to the top of the refrigerator that used to be so easy became a calculated risk. My naps grew longer. The gray around my muzzle grew more pronounced. Dr. Carpenter used words like senior cat and arthritis during our visits. But we adapted together, didn't we? You bought the special food he recommended and started lifting me onto the bed instead of waiting for me to jump. I learned to ask for help when I needed it, something that didn't come easily to my independent nature. We faced our challenges together. When you fell in the bathroom and had to use a walker for several weeks, I stayed close to your feet, careful not to trip you but always near enough to touch. When my kidney problems started and I had to take medicine hidden in bits of cheese, you were endlessly patient, trying different cheeses until you found one that fooled me. Though we both knew I was mostly humoring you, I'd have taken that medicine for you even without the cheese. Last winter was especially hard for both of us. The cold seemed to seep into our bones despite the heat running constantly. You wrapped yourself in layers of sweaters and kept the electric blanket on all night. I stayed under it with you, my presence a small additional warmth against the chill. We watched the snow fall outside the window, both of us quieter than we used to be, conserving our energy. When spring finally arrived, you seemed to brighten with the longer days. You started talking about planting tomatoes again, maybe trying a new variety this year. You cleaned out the garden shed and bought new gloves. I watched from the windowsill as you turned over the soil in the raised beds Frank had built for you years ago. This will be a good summer, you told me, your face flushed with exertion but your eyes clear and hopeful. I believed you. I always believed you. Then came the day I found it hard to get up from my favorite spot by the heating vent. My back legs felt strange, disconnected somehow. You noticed right away. You always noticed when something was wrong with me. The trip to Dr. Carpenter's office was subdued. He took blood samples and x-rays, then spoke to you in a low voice. I couldn't follow all the words, but I understood the concern in your face as you stroked my head. The medicine helped for a while. I could walk again, though not as steadily as before. You rearranged the furniture to create straight paths for me through the house. You put my food and water bowls on a small platform so I wouldn't have to bend down as far. Little accommodations that spoke volumes about your love. But we both knew the good days started coming less frequently. The bad days, when the pain made it hard to purr, when even your gentle touch couldn't comfort me, grew more common. I tried to hide it from you. I'd still meet you at the door when you came home from grocery shopping. I'd still listen attentively when you read aloud, but I couldn't fool you. "Oh, Huxley," you whispered one night as I struggled to find a comfortable position next to you on the bed. "I wish I could make it better." I pressed my head against your hand to let you know that you already had made everything better, every day since you found me outside Miller's Hardware. The last few weeks have been difficult, haven't they? I've watched you making phone calls, talking in hushed tones, wiping tears from your cheeks when you thought I wasn't looking. I've heard you ask Martha to drive us to the vet when it's time. I've seen you sitting on the floor next to my bed, just watching me breathe, your hand gently resting on my side. I want you to know something, Meredith. I've had a good life, the best life a cat could hope for. Before you found me, I never knew what it meant to be truly loved, to belong somewhere, to someone. You gave me that gift. Every meal shared, every gentle word, every soft bed, every scratch behind the ears, they all added up to a life full of more joy than I ever expected. Now, as I feel myself growing weaker, I'm not afraid. How could I be when I've known such kindness? But I worry about you. I see the sorrow in your eyes, feel it in your trembling hands when you stroke my fur. I wish I could tell you that it's okay to let me go, that where I'm heading isn't dark or scary, but peaceful and warm, like your lap on a sunny afternoon. Remember that day last fall when we sat on the porch swing watching the leaves turn golden in the late afternoon light? You were knitting, that blue scarf for Margaret that matched the one she made for you, and I was dozing beside you. A moment so ordinary, yet so perfect. That's what I'll take with me. That's what I hope you'll remember too. Soon I think we'll make that final trip to see Dr. Carpenter. I know you're trying to find the courage. I would spare you this pain if I could. But since I can't, I'll try to be brave for both of us. When the time comes, look into my eyes. You'll see all the love and gratitude I've never been able to put into words. You'll know that you made my life complete. And after, when you come home to a house that feels too quiet, please remember this. Some part of me will always be with you. In the sunbeam that falls across your favorite chair, in the gentle breeze that stirs the garden plants, in the quiet moments before sleep when the world narrows to just your breathing in the darkness. Listen carefully and you might hear a faint, familiar purr. I've been thinking about what happens next. So I'm not sure exactly, but I like to imagine it's something like that perfect spot on the windowsill, warm and safe, with a good view of everything that matters. Whatever it is, I'll be waiting there for you, ready to greet you when it's your time to arrive. No rush, though. You still have gardens to tend, books to read, quiet moments to savor. Thank you, Meredith. For the food and shelter, yes, but more importantly, for the love. For seeing me, really seeing me, when so many others looked right past. For giving an ordinary stray cat an extraordinary life. For being my person. All my love, always. Huxley P.S. Please give Martha's cat Sophie an extra treat from me. And it's okay if you decide to bring another cat home someday. Your lap is too comfortable and your heart too generous to stay empty for long. I won't mind sharing you. After all, you taught me that love only grows when it's given away.